Okay, this new video here, sort of like the last video, is going to focus on, what to do, like countermeasures for when the invasion begins. It's sort of a continuation from the last video, but I wanted to focus more on the countermeasure aspect of it because and that includes with the Trojans, not just the externals coming in. It's also dealing with Trojans that begin here, that materialize in these areas, that that pop up everywhere. Now, I wanted to focus on the stories because that's what these videos are. They're taking from the stories and pointing out specific things that people need to be paying very close attention to that these characters in the stories had actually done in those situations. Because when one day we all are faced with those situations, most people aren't going to know what to do. What's going to happen, and this is exactly what's going to happen, it's not going to be a rifle behind every blade of grass. It's going to be a bunch of soft, weak, panicky people running around and getting basically butchered by the invading Trojans and externals. But that's not to say that's everybody, of course, at the beginning. But the vast majority of our population is not hip to warfare whatsoever. They've never experienced hardship. They've never had to, most of them have never had to live in third world conditions. They don't even know what to do when faced with certain chaos and pandemonium. When you're hearing the noise of millions of rifles beginning to blare and machine guns and, hand grenades, like in the story, and Club K's, artillery shells, tank shells, AT missiles, rockets. You're going to have pandemonium and chaos. That stuff is going to drive people out of their minds. So, that's going to cause them to run around chaotically and get butchered. So, the countermeasures that we'll focus on in the stories when those things were going on was what they did. The very first thing you'll notice that they focused on was what? Was organization. And that takes us back to the very first video. Organizing their response. Figuring out where they were going to go. And then evacuation. Now, evacuation is what I wanted to harp on in this video. Evacuation is basically getting yourself and the weak, the frail, the old, the little, everything in between, to safety. Getting them out of the hot zone and into safety. Now, in the first story, you'll see that they focused primarily on an area in the wooded foothills. Why? Because the likelihood that foreign troops were going to be scouring those areas right away was slim to none. Why? Because they were focused primarily on human settlements, towns, cities, villages. They wanted to the conquest of human settlements first. So that did what? That drove people out. That drove them out of their homes, out of their communities, and into the woods and into the hills. In all the stories, essentially, except for the urban ones, where people were driven underground. That was where they primarily evacuated to at first. Some did try to escape the cities. Most had a hard time with it because cities are cordoned, meaning they're ringed. They're ringed with troops and tanks and IFVs, APCs, so many letters, I get them mixed up. They're ringed with those things, and patrols and helos patrolling and everything. They had no way out. So, it was very rare that people did get out of the urban areas. But in the country, people have a chance if they are able to spot the invaders first. They have a chance to quickly evacuate and get out into nature, get out into the wilderness. So that should be something that people are making contingencies for and focused on, is where they're going to go. Find a wilderness area that's far out of the way.